Next question asked is by Zahid Ahmed from Bihar, India. Kindly tell us in brief the daily routine of Dr. Sahib so we can also take lessons from it, how to live our lives. The question posed by Brother Zahid from Bihar. The best person to take lesson from is the beloved Prophet Muhammad. He is the best example. He, as the Quran says, that we have put him on the pinnacle of the highest standard of character. Surah Qalam, number 16, verse number 4, including Surah Anbiya, number 21, that he is the best example. As far as my routine is concerned, one of them was already answered in the earlier question, that in Bombay I sleep for about 3 to 3.5 hours on average, sometime less, sometime more. When I came to Malaysia, I did Hijrah, and I sleep on average about 3.5 hours to 4 hours, including sometimes I do, I sleep in the afternoon, which is a sunnah, but not every day. All put together on average about 3.5 to 4 hours, sometimes 2 hours, sometimes 2.5 hours, sometimes 4 hours, sometimes 5 hours, sometimes less, sometimes more. The most important and the fard for every Muslim in his daily routine is his salah. The first question that Allah will ask you on the day of judgment among your deed is about your salah. So every Muslim should first be very particular about his salah and see to it that he offers salah 5 times congregational in the mosque. Now, because of lockdown, if you cannot do and pray at home in congregation, Allah will give you equal sawab, inshallah. Like when you're traveling and you don't pray because you're traveling in the mosque, because routinely you travel, because routinely you pray in the mosque, you get the sawab in the mosque. Unanimously, all the scholars say that praying salah in the mosque is fard. Some scholars like Imam al-Dhahabi says that if you do not pray in the mosque in congregation without a valid reason, then it's the 65th major sin in Islam. So I've done a calculation that in Malaysia, I take the timing from the time I do my wudu. The moment I hear the adhan, I do the wudu and wash. Then I walk to the mosque. It takes about 5 minutes, though it's in the same complex where I stay, but going down the lift, etc. Coming back takes 5 minutes, then praying sunnah in the mosque, and then doing the dua for a few minutes, and doing sunnah after the salah if it's there. On average, it takes about 40 minutes. From the time I do my wudu, from the time I heard the adhan, from the time I come back. Some take about 35 minutes, some make 45 minutes, on average 40 minutes. The 5 times salah put together, it comes to about 200 minutes. Then adding salatul duha, which I normally pray after the sun is in between sun rising and sun at the highest point, that is the best. I pray 4 rakat salatul duha, though the Prophet said pray 2 rakat and as many times in 2 rakat as you can. The Prophet most of the time prayed 4 rakat, even I pray 4 rakat after the midpoint of sunrise and the sun at the highest point. And even tahajjud, that's qiyamul layl, all put together, it comes to approximately 200 minutes comes to, and plus adding the minutes comes to about 4 to 4.5 hours, about 2 hours 40 to 300 minutes with the tahajjud, etc. The most important activity of mine is the salah. Besides the first salah, which are the 17 rakat, 2 in the fajr, 4 in the zohar, 4 in the asr, 3 in the maghrib, and 17 plus 3 with the 20. I also offer the 12 rakat sunnat muakkadah. That is the preferred recommended sunnah. And that's the 12 rakat, 2 after fajr, 2 before the fajr salah, 2 plus 2, 4 rakat before the zohar salah, 2 rakat after maghrib salah, and 2 rakat after isha. 12 salah, 12 rakat total. And I also pray the 10 rakat sunnat ghair muakkadah. That is the 2 rakat after the Zohar Salah, 2 plus 2, 4 rakat before the Asr Salah, 2 rakat before the Maghrib Salah, and 2 rakat before the Isha Salah, all put together 10 rakat, all put together with the Farz, the Tar, and the Sunnah Muqaddah 50 rakat. Come to 42, then the Tahajjud, the Qiyamul Layl, 8 rakat, I did 8 plus 3 put together, comes to 50 rakat, and 4 rakat is the Salatul Duha, 54. So normally my routine in Malaysia is minimum I pray 54 rakat, the first sunnat muakkada and sunnat ghair muakkada, 52. There may be additional salah of istikhara, sometimes of salah after the wudu. There's tahiyatul masjid always. So on average, I pray 56 rakat, at least once a day. Amongst the 5 times I go to mosque, once at least I pray tahiyatul masjid. So at least 56 rakat I pray, and sometimes much more. When I was in Bombay, I used to pray the farz, the witr, the sunnat muakkada every day, and sometimes sunnat ghair muakkada, not always. Now I always, and if I miss the sunnat ghair muakkada or the sunnat muakkada, I see to it that I pray as soon as possible. So it's my routine that I pray all. This is the most important part of my activity. I spend a lot of time, and this is the most important. I spend more time in ibadah only of salah to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala than sleeping. And then of course, I read the Quran as per the requirement of my research, of my talk, etc. And the Quranic verses that are there in the salah and the dua. I do the morning askar. And then in Bombay, removing all these things, I used to spend on average earlier about 17 hours a day. It used to be 15, but because I used to go on holiday also, counting only the working days, about 17 hours a day. And then removing the salah, etc., pure would be about approximately would be 15 hours. That's double. A normal worker spends about 10 hours removing salah, etc., 7.5 to 8 hours. So I have to do pure work about 15 hours in the office. Towards the ending of my few years of my stay in Bombay, I used to make it a point that because when my parents got old, I used to see to it that, I used to spend a lot of time doing dawah. Half the time I was outside the country. When I was in the country, the last few years that I stayed in Bombay, maybe in 2016, 15, 14, 13, I saw to it that I had my lunch almost all the days that I was in Bombay with my pets. So after praying my Zohar Salah, I used to go and spend time with my parents, with my mother and my father. May Allah grant the firdaus to my father. And my mother, mashallah, now she's 88 years old. And I pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give her health and lift her at a time which is the best for her. And I used to spend at least 1.5 hours with them, having my lunch, speaking to them, because that's the duty of a Muslim. So that time, then my time in the office became a bit 1 hour less, sort of 7 hours became 16 hours. Here, when I shifted to Malaysia, I increased half an hour of my time, as I told you, in the sleep, and increased approximately 45 minutes to 1 hour in Mesa. My tahajjud came longer than before. Previously I used to pray 95% time, now it is 100% time, alhamdulillah. And God forbid if once in a blue moon, once in several months, if I get up late and pray the Fajr but no time for tahajjud, I pray after the sunrise. That was what the Prophet did. And time for Salah increased by about 45 minutes to 1 hour, and my sleep also increased a bit more. So about 1.5 hours of my time went more in Salah and the other activities. But yet there, on an average, when I used to give approximately 14 hours a day, here on average I give 13 hours a day. Remove time for my meals. On average I take about 20 minutes for my meal. And sometimes when I'm reading the news article, it may extend for 40 minutes, but I put the balance time for my news articles. And most of my time is spent in the work of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In the work of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, on average I spent approximately 1 hour for my family, can be about 1.5 hours. In Bombay, the average was a bit less. During vacation was a bit more, at the time less. Bombay on average was maybe about 1 hour, not counting the vacation. And I had to cover up my time when I had to go on outing for days together with the family. So there's a Venn diagram here, because I'm operating from home, I give much more time than Bombay. Every day on average you can say 1.5, at least an hour or 2 hours. But there's a Venn diagram, most of it, more than 50% discussing the hour with my wife. I speak with my children on the phone. So I'm seeing to it that while doing my activities of farais, that even praying, even sleeping, having the meals, doing dawah, it's a Venn diagram. And people told me that while I was doing dawah, that if I marry, dawah will become less. I married a daiya, was in the field of dawah. So after marriage, my time for dawah increased. Before marriage, maybe it was 9 to 10 hours. After marriage, my dawah time on average per day went to about 12 hours. And also give time to my wife and started a ladies' wing. So it was overlapping. Most of the times we see that they neglect their families. I may not give every day a few hours, but every day maybe few minutes, sometimes half an hour. But we see to it that with my family when I was in Bombay and even now, when I was in India, we used to travel in India at least 3 times outside Bombay in India and 3 times outside India, out of which at least once was Ram. Every Ramadan since the last 20 years, except the last couple of years and this year. For the last 20 years, alhamdulillah, always the family spent about 2 weeks, about 11 to 12, 13 days in Makkah, then next followed by a week in Medina. This was routine, which unfortunately we can't do this year. And so it's a common time between. Many a time when we went abroad, it was together for a dawah lecture tour. While me giving lecture, even my son gave lecture to the general public, and my wife and my daughter and my 2 daughters, Zakir and Rushda, they gave lectures exclusively to the ladies. So imagine we are going for a lecture tour, dawah tour, and we are attending the conference or a lecture tour, maybe 5 days, 6 days, 7 days. And most of the time we are involved in dawah. I giving lecture, my son also giving, my wife and my daughter giving, mashallah. And audience is large number, mashallah. For the ladies normally 1,000, 5,000, 4,000, mashallah. And sometimes or many a times we extend the stay in that country for about 2 to 3 days and go to a resort and have exclusively 24 hours for the family. So on average, if you calculate, besides doing dawah activities, the average per hour is much more than a couple of hours a day. Alhamdulillah. As far as my major activity is concerned, when I was in Bombay, I always have a habit of writing down where I spend my time. I even calculate how much time I take from my doorstep to the doorstep of the mosque, and I know it exactly. I know the timing it takes. It's approximately 3 to 5 minutes depending upon this. Sometimes it comes on time, and if it is ready for me, it will take 3 minutes. If it delayed, it may take 4 minutes. If it stops in between more number of times, it may take 5 minutes. I'm very particular because time is very important. I don't want to even waste a single second, leave aside a single minute. So I have to make a chart. And in Bombay, I know exactly that out of the hours that I have to spend, remove the 7 hours in the office, removing the salah time and lunch time, about 15 hours, then became approximately 14 hours a day. 1/3 of my time used to go to the Peace TV activity, administration of the channel and the graphics and supervising, etc. 1/3 of my time used to go for the school, which was a large portion on average, about 5 hours a day. And traveling for lecture was approximately 8%, doing research another few percent, other activities 1%, and the full chart is there. And when I shifted to Malaysia now, yet my striving is the same. Maybe I'm sleeping half an hour more, little bit of more ibadah, but overall, in terms of percentage, it is close to what I was to do when I was in India, Bombay. Here in Bombay, most of my activities was dawah oriented, but it was more towards hardcore comparative religion. Maybe more than 50%. When I shifted here I continued to dedicate my life for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but the focus has little bit shifted depending upon the requirements and demands. As far as hardcore comparative has little bit reduced, but dawah has continued. Alhamdulillah. It has gone more towards atheism, that's also dawah, but comparative religion is less, because now the sector of the atheism has become the largest in the world. It has outnumbered even the practicing Christian or the practicing Hindus or the practicing Jews. There are, by names, yes, the Christians are the largest, but practicing is the small. Then I have diversified more into other activities, and after shifting to Malaysia, after doing hijrah from India, I meet more Islamic scholars, mashallah, meeting more dais. Malaysia is a hub. Many people keep on coming regularly, and the interaction is much more. And amongst the direct activity, it has shifted more towards the social media. When I was in Bombay, I used to, on average, give maybe half an hour a month to my Facebook, just giving guidelines, maybe 6 hours a year. And to my other Facebook and my other social media, another half an hour on the YouTube. So total 1 hour a month, maybe 12 hours a year. When I shifted here and I wanted to increase on my social media activity, Alhamdulillah, initially I started giving 4 hours only for the Facebook. Maybe 2 years back, and restructured the whole thing, because of which, Alhamdulillah, today the followers on my Facebook is more than 22.4 million. By the grace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, by the help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it is the largest following by any religious speaker in the world, whether Christian, Hindu, Muslim, alhamdulillah. And I realized that once you concentrate and you give, it is more of knowledge based than before. Previously it was more, okay, take a verse of the Quran, put Zakir, Naik's photo, and the likes used to come. But I made it more into knowledge based, giving things more are important. I started a series of the 70 major sins, giving the authentic hadith and other things. Now I'm in the midst of the series of the signs of the ends of the world. I finished the minor signs. After Ramadan we will start the major signs. So more time was spent, and recently, about 1.5 months back, decided to launch. After that we had the YouTube, and I started giving more time for YouTube. Then it became collectively YouTube and Facebook about 4 hours, and the YouTube, alhamdulillah, was hardly 400,000 after I took over exactly 1 year back. 1 year, 2 weeks back, I took in April. Now, mashallah, subscribers of the YouTube are more than 1.7 million. Alhamdulillah. We also got the gold button last year after we crossed the 1 million mark. And because of this, mashallah, the viewership on the social media increased. And for 1.5 months back, we decided to even launch our Instagram, which we have recently launched just a few months before Ramadan. We launched the Instagram, and we also launched the Twitter. We also have Pinterest. So now we are on 5 social media platforms. That is the Facebook is there since 2013, since about 6.5 years. The YouTube is in 2011, about 9 years. The Pinterest is last year, about 1 year. Then we launched the Instagram and the Twitter. These two just hardly less than a month back. And the followers are increasing. So now